sometimes forget that. So yeah, welcome everyone to this workshop on the blue economy in the Arabian Gulf and the Red Sea. My name is Moritz Heinle. I'm a research scientist here at the Center for Environment and Marine Studies, and I'm the co-organizer of this workshop. And so to start off the workshop, I would like to invite our center director, Dr. Fahd Al-Ismail, to give some short words of welcome. So Dr. Fahd, please.
All right, thank you, Dr. Moritz. First of all, good morning, and I would like to welcome all of you to the workshop on the blue economy, with a special focus on the Arabian Gulf and Red Sea. Since it was introduced in 2012, the blue economy concept aims towards economic growth, providing a sustainable utilization of oceanic resources to preserve these resources for the future generation. According to the Commonwealth estimation, the part of the global economy that is related to oceanic resources comprises around $1.5 trillion per year. This economy is highly diverse, ranging from commercializing the fisheries resources to oil and gas exploration, shipping activities, energy generation, medical, and also pharmaceutical uses, long-term storage of carbon dioxide, or recreation services. So Arabic countries are bordering two important extensions of the Indian Ocean, the Arabian Gulf and the Red Sea. Both seas harbor a unique ecosystem and offer a number of potential resources for human use. These resources are highly used by the neighboring countries, and increasing coastal development during recent years suggests an increased use for future. To preserve them, their sustainable utilization needs to be ensured, and viable blue economy concepts need to be developed. The Saudi Vision 2030 and other regional policies have already taken this into account, but further development of these strategies is still required. I hope this workshop will advance the discussion on the blue economy in the region by giving an overview on the status of important components, highlighting potentials, and introducing new concepts that could be applied. With this, I wish you all an interesting and fruitful workshop, and I want to hand over the leader now to Dr. Moritz to continue the workshop sessions. Thank you all so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Fahd, for these nice words of welcome. So let me give you a quick overview over the workshop first. We'll start out with a session on industry and the blue economy this morning, having two presentations. The session will end around 10 a.m., followed by a 15-minute breaks before we are starting the second session, which will focus on fisheries and aquaculture. And the second session will conclude the first day. After that, we'll come back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for the third session, which will focus on blue carbon, so the storage of carbon in soil. And finally, we will have a fourth session tomorrow afternoon, then focusing on the assessment of the blue economy and concepts how to assess the blue economy. If you miss any of the presentations, all the presentations will be recorded, and they will be available upon the request from the KFUPM Center Institute for Knowledge Exchange. And we'll send you details on how to get these recorded presentations when we send you the participation certificate. So I think that was just a brief overview over the workshop as a whole. And now I would like to hand over to the moderator of our first session, Dr. Tariq Al-Droidas. Dr. Brainard.
Thank you, Dr. Morris and Dr. Fahad. Dear speakers and participants, greetings to all. My name is Joy Das. I'm the leader of the Marine Group in the Center for Environment and Marine Studies. I wish you all an excellent time. By the way, we have a very pleasant morning in Tehran, eastern province of Saudi Arabia. The temperature is around 17, 18 degrees Celsius now. Maybe we are expecting people from all over the world in different time zones. So here we have a very good morning. Anyway, we will start the first session. This session is Industry and the Blue Economy. We have two wonderful talks in this session. Each speaker will get up to 30 minutes for the talk. At the 25th minute, I will give a reminder about the time. The talk will be followed by a question and answer session, which will be up to 15 minutes. You can use the raise hand option to ask questions. We will unmute that time. I understand that all participants are on mute mode currently. You can also use Q&A option, where you can type your questions and the moderator will read the questions. Speaker has provided an email address, and if there are more questions, then you are requested to send an email to the speaker directly. Dr. Rusty Brainard will deliver the first talk. Dr. Rusty Brainard is a Chief Environmental Sustainability Officer of the Red Sea Development Company, RSDC. He joined the RSDC in July 2019, and he is responsible for ensuring the environmental sustainability of all aspects of the Red Sea and AMAALA projects, which are pioneering regenerative luxury tourism along the Red Sea coast of Saudi Arabia. In this capacity, Dr. Brainard leads the Department of Environment and Sustainability, which will serve as the environmental regulator for the approximately 20,000 kilometers square special economic zone being established to support these two giga projects. Prior to joining the Red Sea and AMAALA, Dr. Brainard spent more than 38 years as a commissioned officer and then supervisory oceanographer with the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Dr. Brainard holds a BSc in Marine Science from Texas and A&M University, an MS and PhD in Oceanography and Physical Oceanography respectively from the US Naval Postgraduate School. He also presently serves as Courtesy Professor of Marine Science in the Red Sea Research Center at King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, Coast. He has co-authored over 150 scientific papers and reports on various aspects of marine ecosystems and oceanography. With this, I invite Dr. Brainard to deliver his talk, Achieving a Blue Economy Through Regenerative Tourism for the Red Sea and AMAALA Projects. Dr. Brainard, the floor is yours, please.
Salam alaikum, good morning, and thank you to the host at KFUPM. It's an honor to be able to be here as part of this workshop. I think this is a very important timing as we collectively work towards achieving a blue economy. I'll be specifically talking about how the efforts of the Red Sea and AMAALA projects are trying to achieve a blue economy through regenerative tourism. And through the talk, I'll better describe what I mean and what we mean by regenerative. I'd like to acknowledge that all of the work that I'll be presenting is really a collective of my many colleagues with the Red Sea Development Company, as well as colleagues from KAUST and KAU and the Ministry of Environment, Water and Agriculture, and many, many, many partners. So really what I'll be speaking is on behalf of this broader group. Generally, if you're not familiar with the Red Sea and AMAALA projects, they're really, and I think you'll come to conclude the same, they're really the world's most ambitious luxury tourism and hospitality projects that exist. We're really working to set new standards in sustainability and to position Saudi Arabia on the global tourism map. And part of this is all part of His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman's Vision 2030 for the kingdom. And this particular part is to establish a tourism industry. Previously, in Saudi Arabia, the tourism sector is relatively small, being 3.4% of the Saudi GDP, whereas globally, it's over 10%. So we're really trying to significantly develop an entirely new industry for the kingdom. I'm going to show a short video here that gives you much better than I can describe in words visually a little bit more about this the Red Sea project, and this extends to AMAALA as well.
Experience an exquisite destination. Created in perfect harmony with the natural environment. A place where luxury meets adventure. Where body and spirit are restored. Where dreams take flight. A place beyond imagination, beyond expectation. Experience the Red Sea.
Hopefully that video gave you a sense of the Red Sea and by extension, the AMAALA projects. Just spectacular natural beauty, rich in biodiversity, many different types of habitats, these mangroves, coral reefs, seagrass, marine mammals. And we firmly believe that it's this environmental richness that will be attracting visitors from around the globe. Folks, the people that we're attracting could really choose any destination in the world for their vacation and their recreation time. We believe it's the underpinning of this beautiful natural environment that people will choose our destination here along the Red Sea coast of Saudi Arabia. As the kind of the foundation of our business model, we're trying to go in a completely different direction than most tourism developments which have typically ended out slowly deteriorating the natural environment around them. We're from the very beginning working to regenerate, to actually because of the development, actually improve the environment over time, making there more reason to come to our destination. This map just shows kind of where we hope to be by the end of 2030. All the 22 islands would be developed for a total of 8,000 keys. We purposely, through a very extensive marine spatial planning exercise, limited the overall growth. So this is the maximum number of keys, and the maximum number of visitors per year for Red Sea Project is capped at about 1 million. And that's on purpose, and that's to protect and conserve the natural environment. Here's some the figures that are now added here are the developments that are currently rapidly under construction. Some of these will open at the end of 22, and all of them will be open by the end of 2023. So very, very rapid development going on in phase 1 of the Red Sea project. As part of the project, the King is establishing by royal decree a special economic zone, and that's to support international investment and social norms, as well as to enable us to better protect and enhance the environment. We're really creating a science-informed, adaptive, ecosystem-based management, regulatory environment and system to help us protect and enhance the environment. You can see from the numbers in the lower right, the overall area of the special economic zone is about 20,000 kilometers squared, with a total shoreline around the 95 plus islands and coastline of over 800 kilometers, so a very extensive area. I mentioned the regenerative approach, and again, improving the environment over time because of the development. This figure kind of shows some of the commitments the Red Sea Development Company has made, from 100% renewable energy to free of single-use plastics to zero waste to landfill. And then a commitment and alignment to all 17 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The blue area outlined in the center there, I'll focus much of this talk, which is on a blue economy, on our efforts to achieve carbon neutrality and our 30% and our efforts to achieve a 30% net positive conservation benefit. which we're defining in terms of measurable biological diversity. So with that, I'll kind of, what do I mean by a science-informed, adaptive, ecosystem-based management? That's a lot of words. And in a nutshell, it's really trying to balance ecological well-being on one hand with human well-being, social and economic well-being on the other hand. And we do that through good governance. So it's balancing the trade-offs and reducing the risk. So if we picture this cartoon as an ecosystem and ecosystem-based management, there's been efforts from the scientific community to move in this direction for over 30 years. But there's been a myth that ecosystem-based management requires you to know everything about everything before you can do anything. I'd like to say that that's not the case at all. What we really want to do for ecosystem-based management requires that you use the best available science that you have, and then to iteratively or adaptively fill the information gaps and adapt your management actions as the science continues to unfold. And that's what we mean by ecosystem-based management. So this is, again, it's a circular process where you plan, you do, and you check and you adapt your management plan based on the continual monitoring and evaluation of how the system is working. All of the stages of this process need to be informed by science. So I guess we're kind of having that as the underpinning of the information needs to help us protect and enhance the environment. So I mentioned the regenerative approach. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about these two really challenging commitments we've made. And for us, the commitment to carbon neutrality, unlike others, and we don't have to, but we're choosing, because we're a tourism industry and a tourism sector, we're owning and claiming responsibility for all of the emissions for all aspects of our operations, which include people flying from all over the globe to visit our destination. We're coming up with ways, and I'll show some of the examples, to capture all of the carbon so we can truly be carbon neutral over time. The next commitment is this 30% net increase in biodiversity over the next 2 decades. So I'll go into a little bit more details on what we mean by that. And you'll see a couple times I refer to the marine circular bioeconomy. That's somewhat of a reflection of a working group or a task force I'm on marine circular bioeconomy. For much of the purposes of this presentation, I'll interchangeably use blue economy and marine circular bioeconomy. In this particular example, we're using these approaches to help us achieve carbon neutrality. And the ones highlighted in blue in this circle here are one of the ones really that tie to a blue economy. So the sequestration and capturing of atmospheric carbon and storing of atmospheric carbon to sustainable food production, particularly aquaculture, to brine uptake and production of biofuels. And then of course, the 4 R's and clean mobility are all approaches towards the blue economy that we're embracing and working towards implementation as we speak. So some of the examples, again, I've already mentioned the 100% renewable energy. We're presently building our solar plant. The entire project will be based on solar energy with the world's largest, at least at present, the world's largest battery storage system. So that we can achieve this net zero carbon emissions. And I won't go to all of the details. So this is actually under construction right now. So I'm not going to go into great detail, but the components of our public-private partnership for our utilities, our renewable power, our potable water, our wastewater, our treatment, solid waste management, and our district cooling are being built right now for completion by the end of next year. I mentioned briefly the clean mobility, so that's electric and hydrogen vehicles. I'm highlighting the latter parts of that. We're even working towards transitioning our boat fleet, our vessel fleet, to be hydrogen or electric or renewable energy. So blue economy or blue carbon on the water as well. Another example of this circular bioeconomy is we're planning to do away no kind of fossil fuel powered plant. So it's entirely going with solar energy. And then to capture carbon, we're using both direct air capture and primarily right now we're just in the exploration phase, but we think we'll go primarily with marine microalgae production farms or photobioreactors that use sunlight, nutrients, and water to the marine microalgae photosynthesize, they capture carbon, and then we can take that biomass, that algal biomass, and turn it into a whole suite of products, including fuels, foods for people or animals, or even bioplastics. There's a whole range of products we can produce from this. These are just some examples of some of the companies and some of the approaches we're looking at for large scale sequestration or carbon capture using microalgae. We're also working with a company that's an outfit that's exploring raceway ponds with macroalgae. That hasn't been done previously. There's a project in Oregon in the United States piloting that right now. I mentioned there's many uses of this microalgae. And for us, one of the nice stories is if our visitors, which say are coming from China or Indonesia or India or London or the United States, they're emitting carbon on their flight in. If we can demonstrate physically and visually and sensorily that we're actually capturing the carbon of their incoming flight through this production of microalgae, we could, and we're in discussions with companies like Saudi Aramco, turn that into sustainable aviation fuel that would then refill their aircraft, and then that would be a circular economy of taking carbon out of the atmosphere through microalgae, turning that into fuel, and then circularizing it in a marine circular bioeconomy sense. We're also looking at food production. This is an example of a kind of a conceptual model from some colleagues in Abu Dhabi called the SEAS system, where they're doing food production with aquaculture, with aviation fuel production with hapathites, and then discharge of cleaning that water with mangroves. That's a model similar to what we're trying to do with recirculating aquaculture systems for seafood production. We're presently in a contract with Red Sea Farms for produce production, to where we're trying to get to where we're growing a third of our food within the SEZ locally and sustainably on the SEZ or in the SEZ. One example of another project that we've just started with Blue Planet Ecosystem, again, is in a pilot stage, is their LARA system. Actually, at the top layers, it's again this marine microalgae, which is photosynthesizing, sequestering some carbon. They're feeding that to zooplankton, which they're then feeding to fish and shrimps. And again, that's just a pilot project at a very small scale, but we're working towards generally to demonstrate the approaches that we're working towards. The next major goal that we're working towards, and very challenging, is this 30% net increase in biodiversity over time. And again, for us, this is kind of the circular part of our marine bioeconomy. Is the environment is what we believe will attract our visitors from around the globe. By giving back what they're putting and what they're spending in building and improving upon the environment means more reason to come. So it just becomes, again, a circular investment model or bioeconomy. So the first component of how we're planning to achieve for the marine environment, this increase in 30% increase in biodiversity is through the establishment of a no-take marine protected areas for our marine waters. The map on the left shows in the red lines is the Red Sea project area down to the south, the AMAALA area in red up here to the north, oops, and the Prince Mohammed bin Salman Reserve outlined in purple here. We're talking about having the coastal zone from the northern boundary of the reserve to the southern boundary of the special economic zone out to a depth of 500 meters as the no-take reserve. So the total area would be over 7,400 kilometers squared. That would to be co-managed by the SEZ and the reserve, and initially with the MIWA National Center for Wildlife as a key partner. Overall, we believe there will be significant positive economic benefits from that. We're informing an alternative livelihood strategy for the displaced Saudi fisher folk, and we're developing other industries like the marine microalgae and the recirculating aquaculture systems to replace the seafood that's lost from that. The benefits from the tourism sector are significant increases in fish biomass, particularly the most depleted fishes, which are the sharks, the groupers, the jack, the large fishes, the long-lived reef fishes, which have been overexploited in recent decades. We think this will be a significant increase for our particular business model, which is tourism. It will also help protect the corals. It'll help protect sea turtles, dugongs, cetaceans, the sea birds. It'll help with prevent damage from anchoring. So again, we believe there'll be significant positive social economic benefits from this regenerative tourism. In order to do this, we need extensive ecosystem assessment and monitoring. I won't go into all of the details here, starting with very high resolution maps of both our nearshore systems, our coral reefs, our mangroves, our seagrass systems, as well as similar high resolution mapping for our terrestrial systems. Some of the methods, we're just completing the first real baseline coral reef assessments of our entire area. We just completed 300 surveys. Statistically, we essentially do a wide but thin stratified random survey design of the shallow water reef habitats. This is kind of the method shown for our reef fish surveys, which are 50-meter belt transects. At the beginning of these, we have structure from motion plots, which I'll show in greater detail in coming slides. But again, we just completed the 300 surveys across the area. And again, this is over 200 kilometers of shoreline shown in this figure. We completed, and this plot on the upper left is the habitats. So we surveyed by habitat types, and then this is the actual fish biomass at each of these survey locations, the 300 survey locations. And then this is just some examples. Again, these were just completed last month, but biomass by fish family and then by fish trophic groups, so the piscivores, the planktivores, and the primary and secondary consumers. The figure on the left is I think very interesting. So from our 300 surveys, the mean fish biomass is shown where my cursor is, far to the left. We see the areas off Thule, down by Jeddah and Al Leith, a little bit higher, but still significantly different than the line on the far right is an area with fish biomass in a remote part of the Red Sea. This is on the other shore, the unpopulated areas. And that's what we're trying through this no-take marine protected area, is to recover fish populations back to what we believe are much more normal populations. And for our particular business model of tourism, we think that will be very, very beneficial. So for our coral and benthic surveys, we do these structure from motion surveys. And I'll show you a video of how powerful that method is, which is essentially just going back and forth over the C4, over a 20-meter by 5-meter belt. And then I'll show you what we get, and then doing more standard photo quadrats for the remainder of the 50 meters that the fish surveys are being conducted on. So this looks like it's a video taken by divers or something. This is actually the reconstruction from structure from motion, creating a 3-dimensional model of everything in that 20 by 5-meter plot. And for monitoring purposes, instead of what's typically done is a very small, say 1 meter by 1 meter photo quadrat at a very small number of locations, we can go back and monitor the vital rates or the growth rates of every species, whether it's coral or not, and which species are growing fast, which ones are bioeroding over time. So we can, for really the first time at large scale, monitor the entirety of this structure. And in this, we've now used machine learning. We just completed this last week of annotating the first 1,500 images from the photo quadrats, and then developing a model with virtual machine learning in CoralNet, which is classifying that, building a model, and then for different, and so this is for all hard coral. You see the human annotator versus the the CoralNet robot, or the algorithm that we've created, is very, very accurate. And then for different functional groups of the different corals here on the left, and then other functional groups of the benthos on the right, for some of them it doesn't do great, but for the corals and most of the habitats or substrates, the model is doing very well. And the lower left is what really is the reason we need to do that, is the 1,500 images we used to train the computer took about 90 hours of people time. So extensive effort to analyze all those images. Once it's trained, it took the robot 2 hours. So it's greatly increases our efficiency and ability to process the large amounts of information. So we're also monitoring our protected species over time, our dugongs, our cetaceans, our turtles, our whale sharks. We've just completed bird surveys of all of our islands during the nesting seasons for the respective islands. This is just some examples of the individual nest and the colony areas and counts of eggs per nest, and then the distribution of birds on this one particular island. We now have this for all of our islands. Also this year, we piloted with just 4 birds, a sooty falcon telemetry study. So this is tracks and telemetry from 4 different birds. Each of these colors is a different bird. It shows both the range that they're going. It was much of a surprise that they went 13 kilometers inland for their foraging, and individual birds were covering about 34 kilometers of coastline up and down the coast. We also recorded the speed of these animals. Other things that we're monitoring is the small infauna of the reef, what we call cryptobiota. Similarly, on the terrestrial side, we're looking at the insect communities because they combine. The cryptobiota typically represent about 99% of the overall diversity of a system. So we're trying to get a good handle on how these populations are doing as well, all the way down to the microbial community and the environmental DNA. So we're starting to monitor because it's innovative, but mostly because it's the most cost-effective ways to look at and rapid ways to look at biodiversity and how things are changing over time, or if we have invasive species presence, or to look at rare species like our megafauna, our dugongs, which we have very poor estimates of now, see which habitats they're dominating. So the other part of our efforts to enhance biodiversity is specifically working to choose, and somewhat subjectively, choosing our most biologically diverse habitats, our coral reefs, our mangroves, our seagrass, and our native land vegetation, and working over 20 years to enhance each of those habitats in abundance by 30%. And as you can see, 3 of those are also part of our carbon capture. They're blue carbon in terms of seagrass and mangroves, but also the land vegetation is capturing carbon to help us with our neutrality. So the most challenging of these by far is trying to establish 30% more coral reefs or corals by 2030. That's going to require extensive partnerships. We're already establishing these partnerships, working to increase coral abundance and maintain diversity by restoring and enhancing existing reefs, primarily through enhancing reproductive success, not building a bunch of structures and hoping corals adapt to them, but actually going to existing reefs and increasing abundance. So if a particular reef has a 10% coral cover, working to get 13% is a 30% increase for that particular reef. So again, it's how we're actually doing it. And again, mostly focusing on increasing reproductive success. We're also working to address the dealing of ocean warming and acidification in our area. The plot on the bottom shows, and the lower part of that shows the degree heating weeks. And you see 2020, we had a mass degree heating week event or coral bleaching event in our area. The frequency of these events is greatly increasing. So we want to accelerate natural acclimation to these thermally resilient coral reefs of our nearshore to our offshore reefs over time. One of the things we've just pioneered is we developed these floating coral nurseries. The 2 figures on the left, the upper one is the design. We deployed these in August and September, and just last week we completed moving over 1,024 crates of corals to these new floating coral nurseries as one of the areas where we we hope to really use as the kind of the source for this enhancement of corals much more largely. we're in a partnership, in addition to KAUST and KAU and some of our local partners, we're also working with Seacore International, who've developed these small structures. We're hoping to use the coral nurseries to have corals naturally settle and recruit to these structures. And then we, rather than physically attaching all of the corals, which is what's presently done around the globe, which is very expensive and very time consuming, we're trying to get around the scaling up issue by having the settlement on these tiles and then just essentially laying those tiles in the appropriate habitats to increase their success. I mentioned the 30% mangrove enhancement. So that for us, we're trying to grow 6.1 kilometers squared of new mangrove habitat by 2040. We've now mapped all of our mangrove areas, and actually we've done some studies on how much carbon that will sequester. When mature, the 6.1 kilometers squared of mangrove habitat will sequester 450 tons of CO2 per year, a very exceptional effort, but not enough. We've also started to identify, we're working with the National Center for Vegetative Cover in MIWA. We had a site visit 2 weeks ago where we identified the pilot locations for our first pilots in mangrove enhancement efforts. For all of these efforts and to inform our decision-making, we're developing ecosystem models that help us. Essentially, they become a tool for management strategy evaluation. We can do what if scenarios, whether it's climate change or management actions. If we do this, how will that ripple through the ecosystem? What will be the economic benefits and trade-offs? And doing that in a quantitative way doing these models. We're just at the beginning stages of the developing models. It typically takes 3 to 5 years to have really robust models that you can use as a decision support tool. But these we're starting to develop right now. And again, as a long-term decision support tool for the changes and to help with our regulatory management moving forward. And all of this, and when we talk about a blue economy, we're often talking about the social economic benefits. For the Red Sea project and AMAALA, you can see between the two projects, we're anticipating creating up to 120,000 new jobs and adding significantly to GDP during construction, but then in a steady state, a continual influx of income and GDP for the kingdom. In the process, in terms of principles, we'll be creating jobs. We're really working towards Saudiization. We have scholarship programs because there hasn't been previously a hospitality, particularly a tourism hospitality industry in the kingdom. We've granted 120 scholarships for the University of Prince Muqrin to essentially train Saudis in that industry, which they haven't previously done. We've sponsored 60 recent Saudi graduates as employees, and actually we're in the recruitment right now for the next 30 for next year. And these are young Saudis to be the future talent pool for the Red Sea and AMAALA projects moving forward. And in summary, and I hope I haven't gone too fast, is we're actively working to actually achieve a blue economy or a marine circular bioeconomy through this regenerative tourism. And again, regenerative tourism is going beyond sustainability. We're actually having the development work to improve the environment. And again, that hasn't been done before. That's why we say we're pioneering it. All of this is to build a regulatory system that's informed by science, and it's adaptive, and it incorporates the whole of the ecosystems, including the humans. I probably didn't state adequately, the humans are a key part of these ecosystems, so including that in all of the decision-making. Some of the examples are the carbon neutrality. I won't go through numerous approaches to achieve carbon neutrality, numerous approaches to enhance biodiversity, and then these commitments to zero waste to landfill, zero single-use plastics, and alignment with all 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. And with that, I welcome questions and look forward to continued discussion over the next couple of days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Brainard. It was a very important and valuable presentation. These two projects are the ambitious project, giga projects of Saudi Arabia, and he explained how Saudi Arabia is achieving a blue economy through these tourism projects. And now we can go to the question and answer session. Please use your raise hand option. There is one question from Dr. Omar.
Muhammad Ashraf has a question. Ashraf, go ahead.
Thank you for this enlightening presentation, Dr. Rusty. It is great to know the large efforts carried by Red Sea and AMAALA to protect our sensitive environment. Hats off to this excellent work. Actually, I don't have any questions, but I am privileged to inform you that we, the Center of Environment and Marine Studies in KFUPM, is also joining this Red Sea and Development Company and AMAALA to protect our sensitive environment and as a part of this prestigious tourism project in the kingdom. We are contracted by China Harbor Company, and we have been doing the full-time monitoring the Shaibara and Ummahat Islands as a part of this ongoing dredging and piling project. We would like to thank you for this, giving these opportunities to KFUPM. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. I was very aware of the monitoring work that you're doing in subcontract to China Harbor. Keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are doing our level best to protect our sensitive environment.
Thank you.
Dr. Morris.
Thank you, Ashraf.
Yeah, thank you, Rusty, for this really nice presentation. Really interesting. So you showed with regard to the fish biomass that it was quite a bit lower than in other areas, even like along the Saudi Red Sea coast. So do you have any reason for that, particular explanation for that?
Yeah, well, I think because I think that may be an artifact, a little bit of different methods used. Certainly those areas are depleted compared to pristine conditions, and ours are certainly depleted compared to pristine conditions, particularly, you know, for those larger fishes that are most exploited, and most of the fishery is occurring on reef fish. So I suspect that the examples that we showed are just were from available data of mean biomass for Thule and Al-Leith. But those reflect depleted populations, and I think they're probably fairly comparable and probably within observer error. And I don't think, I mean, ours were all visual surveys underwater. Most of the prior other work has been catch per unit effort surveys based on fishery landings. So it's probably somewhat of a reflection of that.
And one more, so you were talking that you like giving alternative career option to fishermen, like this kind of sort of program. Can you tell us a bit more about this, what you're doing there?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing we did is we contracted to University of Tabuk to do the social economic survey of the members of the fishing community. So both the fishermen, the boat owners, as well as the shoreside aspects of kind of maintaining the boats to the market, supply and demand part of the markets that use that seafood. So they did those surveys. We're looking at those to inform the alternative livelihoods. For our particular area, and fortunately, the Coast Guard and MIWA maintain exceptionally good records, much better than really anywhere else I've seen in terms of who goes out fishing every day. Every single member of every boat has to check in and out at the Coast Guard stations, including that, you know, with their national IDs or their ICAMAs. And in our particular area, over 90% of the actual fishing is done by expats on Saudi-owned boats. When we're talking about alternative livelihoods, we're really looking at coming up with approaches and livelihoods for the displaced Saudis, not the expat labor force that's imported in. And some of those, I mean, we're going to be having hundreds of boats operating the. I mean, most of our tourism is on islands. There's going to be extensive tourism operations. I mentioned the fishing offshore of the 500-meter isobath. We may come up with approaches like helping convert the nearshore fishing boats, which are fishing primarily on coral reefs, to offshore fishing boats so they can continue to fish, but only in the offshore waters. The boats they currently have may not be as suitable. Certainly the gear that they have is not suitable. So possibly the alternative livelihood strategy would be to help them with this transition of fishing gear or training and building capacity for a different type of fishing, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, great, thank you.
Thank you. There is a question from Dr. Manikandan.
Hi, Rusty. It was a wonderful presentation. Just I have two questions. One is regarding the aquaculture practices, what you're doing. Are they native species or are they imported species?
Did you say for the aquaculture? I'm sorry.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, at this point, we haven't decided, but we're only really looking at recirculating aquaculture systems inland with no exchange with the natural environment. Ideally we'd like local species, but we know that much of the clientele of recirculating aquaculture systems, which we think are the most environmentally friendly with the least risk to the natural environment, which is why we're going that path. Those haven't been done for a very large range of fish species and haven't yet been done for any of the native species. In the near term, I think, and right now no decisions have been made, but I suspect in the near term, the first pilot RAS system that we go with will probably be something with a proven technology with something like salmon. We know our visitors who are going to be coming from all over the world are going to want some salmon. So it wouldn't make sense for us to be importing salmon from far away and then locally growing food that is also available from our other communities along the coastline. So initially, I think it'll probably be external species as we do with the General Directorate for Fisheries and the university's continued R&D on recirculating aquaculture systems for native species, if that makes sense.
I have one more question regarding the carbon sequestration using microalgae. Have you faced any breakthrough, because there's a lot of potential sunlight in Saudi Arabia? So are there any breakthroughs in terms of carbon sequestration using microalgae?
We know that Saudi Aramco now has something like 800 hectares of microalgae in production that they're turning into biofuels. So we're in discussions about potentially working with Aramco or others as one of the solutions, but they're currently growing microalgae in Kingdom. We understand that Biotech, a Jeddah-based company, is using native species of microalgae. I think they're going to be piloting a significant microalgae production farm, I believe, for pharmaceuticals. So we were, and actually there's a spinoff, I believe, at Kaust that's now looking at microalgae production. So I think it's just a matter of time, and we're trying to help lead and help pioneer and looking actually for investors who want to kind of move into the microalgae production capability, both for the products as well as for the carbon sequestration.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Rommel?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Rusty, for a very interesting presentation. You mentioned the need for a rapid and frequent monitoring of the coral reef, and you highlighted the structure from motion technology. And I would like to ask, what's the benefits of reproducing 3D models of the reef compared to the conventional 2D visualization monitoring? And another one is the coral net machine that you have mentioned, a free software that we can use if we intend to implement the same technique here in the Arabian Gulf?
Yeah, excellent questions. In terms of what we get from structure from motion is a huge advancement, really, in coral reef monitoring capability. In the past, if we wanted information on vital rates of corals, so things like growth rates and recruitment rates, we typically tagged individual colonies, and by default, we were tagging a very, very small number of colonies, usually, in the single digits or few digits, because it was very labor intensive for a diver, an expert diver, to tag an individual colony. And usually those were only done on a subset of the species, the one that particular researcher was interested in. The structure from motion, every species of coral or other taxa that are in the structure from motion survey plots, every one of those will have three-dimensional structure of. And when we go back to those 6 months later or a year later or 3 years later, we will be able to identify the exact same colonies in the exact same, and we'll see which ones have grown by how much. So we can actually really get much more accurate growth rates for every colony rather than just a few tagged colonies. And so it'd be all taxa rather than the ones of interest at the time of the tagging experiment. On your second question, yes, CoralNet is publicly available. I believe it's free. You still have to train. So it's essentially a tool for processing images. And the virtual machine learning part of CoralNet, and I may be wrong, it may not be free. I think it is. We've been working with folks at San Diego State for a number of years, or University of California, San Diego at Scripps for a number of years in my former job, and now we're using it here, and it's continually improving. You still have to train the model for each location. So that's what we did most recently with those 1,500 images for one class of coral habitat. So we still need to train the model for other types of habitats with our system. So anywhere else along the Saudi coast or the Gulf coast for reefs, it would need to be trained a little bit, but we anticipate that the deviances from the model that we've developed for ours will just be tweaking, and there'll be some minor adjustments for this location versus that location. There's that initial investment of people analyzing individual images to train, as I showed in the example. We spent 90 hours of people time examining the images to train the robot essentially. And then when we actually run the model against the other images and compare it to how the people did, you saw the linear regressions are very good fit to them. In fact, I actually believe the advantage of machine learning is when you're having people's eyeballs analyzing images, which has been done for coral reef monitoring for generations. And we've actually, it's been published several times. I published a paper a few years ago as a co-author that the same images looked at by different scientists, and these are even PhD scientists, will get slightly different answers because they're looking at an image and making a judgment of what they think it is. Even the same individual looking at the same image, not knowing it, looking at it later, will come up with a different answer. The advantage of machine learning is once you train it, it still won't get it perfect, but it'll do it the same way every time until you change the algorithm, and then you can run the model over all of the images again as you steadily improve the model because computing time is so much cheaper. Did that make sense?
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope we can try it here. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd certainly be happy to work with you to develop the training for it.
Thank you, Dr. Rommel and Dr. Brainard. We have one more question from Mr. Premlal.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Dr. Rusty, for the wonderful presentation. Apart from carbon sequestration, I just want to ask you, because this is the project where the whole world is looking into, I would like to know what are the offset programs by Red Sea Company for the environmental studies we're carrying out. What are the offset programs which is planned?
That's a good question. Again, we're presently trying to sequester all of the carbon at our site using a suite of means. And some of them I showed, the nature-based solutions, the mangroves, the seagrass, the land vegetation, the micro and macro algae production farms. We're also looking at direct air capture. So we're actually trying to capture all of the carbon on site locally rather than us purchasing carbon credits elsewhere. And in fact, we're exploring the option, and it's too early really because we haven't even piloted it yet. But we're hopeful that the large scale marine microalgae production farms will both be cost effective. We think as we develop the right suite of products from it, we think it will actually be a good business model. So we may scale up well beyond capturing carbon for what we need to reach carbon neutrality, but to actually expand those production farms so we're actually sequestering more than we're producing, and then us entering the carbon market as a seller rather than as a buyer. But again, that's still probably a decade off, but we're looking long-term in that direction.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, thank you. There are some questions in the question and answer box. One is from Dr. Srinivas. Thank you for good environmental initiatives and sensitizing the tourism project, which is going to be a role model. I would like to know a little more about seagrass protection programs. The question from Dr. Srinivas.
Thank you. At this point, we don't have a good model developed for how we're going to do the seagrass enhancement. In fact, we're just now in this process of mapping how much seagrass we actually have. We believe that the baseline maps that we had, which were done from satellite imagery, are not very good. In fact, we've seen that in many cases where we've actually gone to sites that don't show as seagrass and finding seagrass and vice versa. So we're in the process now, first of mapping how much seagrass we have, and then reaching out across the global community to look at how we work towards enhancement. But that is an area where we just haven't done our homework yet, as we're still building the baselines.
Thank you. There's one more question, but I cannot read the name of the person who asked the question because it is written in Arabic. Can you please explain to us in detail of method of work? But it is.
Which method is the question?
Dr. Jonas, can you maybe unmute the person? Is he still in the attendees?
Yes, I will. I have to check. Yes, I think
Can you unmute
I did it already now.
Okay.
Can you please ask question, please? Otherwise, I will ask one question. This is regarding the construction. A large-scale construction are required in this form of dredging. So, can you please explain one or provide one example of bad method which you discarded in this project, and instead you used a better one?
Did you say have we
discovered because we have conventional a lot of construction methods are there. So, can you please tell one example which, because of some reason, you did not use this construction method in this giga project?
Something isn't. I'm sure there are probably numerous examples. None are coming to mind immediately. I think one is we're working we're working for the environmental and social impact assessments, which to date haven't had an adequate, in my opinion, temporal component. They've typically done an initial survey at one time of one particular day, whether that's on water quality or on abundance of zooplankton or abundance of any other parameter that we're measuring, but it's a snapshot in one particular time of one particular day. And as we all know, almost everything we measure in the marine environment is changing on many, many different timescales. Most of the parameters in the marine environment, particularly the nearshore marine environment, are changing even on diurnal timescales. The wind, we have very diurnal winds. Certainly we have day and night. So there's significant changes in water quality, in temperature, even in salinity that are changing on rapid timescales, as well as seasonal timescales. We have a strong seasonal timescale at our site, particularly our nearshore marine environment, where it gets in the temperatures get in the mid-teens in the winter and in the mid-30s in the summer. And yet most of the actual ESIAs just have a snapshot of water quality on a day that they take it. So we're trying to establish much more robust baselines that we share across the community that can then be incorporated into future ESIA. So right now, even though we haven't started, we don't have final approval to go ahead with phase 2 of the Red Sea project, we're trying to start establishing those baselines and those temporal time series so that when those ESIAs are conducted, the baseline information of temporal variability will be available as one example.
Thank you so much. I think we don't have more questions. The earlier question, I think because of mic problem, he cannot ask the question. I think if this is the case, I think we can go to the next presenter. Thank you so much, Dr. Brainard. That was a wonderful presentation, and followed by we had very good, nice question and answer session also. Now we will go to the next presenter. Next presenter is Dr. Aboobacker. Dr. Aboobacker, before he starts his presentation, let me introduce him. Dr. Aboobacker has been working as a research assistant professor at Qatar University since 2019. He has awarded a PhD in marine sciences from Goa University, India in 2011, and carried out postdoctoral research at the National University of Singapore. He worked as an assistant professor at King Abdulaziz University, Jeddah during 2015 to 2019. Dr. Aboobacker is basically a physical oceanographer, contributing to multidisciplinary aspects of marine sciences. His specific interests are ocean waves, coastal processes, marine renewable energy, and climate change. He has published 34 papers in peer-reviewed journals and participated in several international conferences. In these few words, I invite Dr. Aboobacker to deliver his talk, Perspective of Wind Energy, Resources in the Arabian Gulf and the Red Sea. Dr. Aboobacker, please.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Joydas, for a nice introduction. Am I audible?
Yes.
My slides can also be viewed.
Yes, we can see your slides.
Yeah.
You can put it in slideshow mode.
Okay. Is it enlarged?
Yes.
Okay. A very good morning to everyone. In fact, I'm very happy and feeling delighted to participate in this workshop, which is about the blue economy in the Red Sea, blue economy of the Arabian Gulf and Red Sea. It is an interesting topic as far as the Arabian Gulf and the Red Sea are concerned. My today's talk is basically the perspectives of wind energy resources in the Arabian Gulf and Red Sea. Wind energy in general is a clean and renewable energy, often we referred as green energy. But when it comes to the marine environment, wind energy resources are also part of blue economy. We are all talking about the global climate changes, carbon emissions, net zero emission, carbon dioxide capturing, sustainable developments, and renewable energy, and so on. These are all, the importance of blue economy comes here because we need to have less impact to the marine environment. Whatever the resources we are exploring, from that we need to get very least environmental impact. In that sense, the blue economy has a wide impact in the coming years. So the major component of the blue economy, as we all know from the previous talk, also we come to know a little more about that. The major components are fisheries, aquaculture, maritime, transport, marine biotechnology, and bioprospecting, extraction of non-living resources, desalination, marine renewable energy. So marine renewable energy has a very good role in the blue economy because of the dynamic nature of the ocean and the atmosphere above that. So the major components in marine renewable energy are the offshore winds, waves, tides, currents, and thermal energy. My today's talk is only based on the offshore winds. It's basically the wind resource assessments for the Arabian Gulf and the Red Sea. When we talk about the winds, the wind has wind is generally invariable in nature. It keep on changing time to time, or it changes from place to place. So it is not constant. So that it contains a lot of variabilities, seasonal variability, regional variability, and so on. Interannual variability, because of the climatic indices such as El Nino, La Nina, Northern Atlantic oscillations, and so on. So there are a lot of variabilities. So we need to know the wind climate of a particular region. What are the changes happening around that before making an assessment of the wind resources? So this is our region. This is geographical domain where we are. It is connecting the Arabian Gulf here. It is connecting to the Arabian Sea through the Strait of Hormuz. And the Arabian Gulf is bounded by the Gulf countries as well as Iran on the other side. Similarly, we have another Gulf which is connecting through the Strait of Bab el-Mandab, which is the Red Sea, bordered by Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Sudan, Eritrea. These are the countries bordering the Red Sea. When we look at these two Gulfs, these two have distinct features. For example, if you look at the Arabian Gulf is a relatively shallow basin. The maximum depth is of the order of 100 meters. But at the same time, the Red Sea is very deep, of the order of up to 2,000 meters. It's like a miniature of the global ocean. So the features around this are totally different. But I'm not going in detail about the oceanographic part of the region, but my interest today is on wind energy, which is above the ocean. So I will focus on about the wind. So there are two typical seasons in the region. If you look at the synoptic wind systems of the region, we can say that during summer, we have a southwest monsoon season, during which we get the winds from southwest, and which are very strong in the Arabian Sea. But when you look at the Arabian Gulf, the winds are not as we see during this associated with southwest monsoon. The winds are predominantly in southwest direction. In northwest direction. It's coming from northwest direction throughout the Arabian Gulf basin. If you look at the Red Sea basin, the winds are mostly northerly or northwesterly directions throughout the basin. So these are the characteristics of the winds during summer season. When it changes to the northeast monsoon, that is during winter, say November to February, we can say that the wind reverses in the Arabian Sea. The wind is coming from northeast direction. At the same time, if you look at the Arabian Gulf, we can see that the wind is still northwesterlies. The predominant wind systems in the Gulf is still northwesterlies, but the magnitudes are slightly higher because of strong shamal winds. In the Red Sea, we can see a distinct patterns of winds. It is unlike the summer season, you can see that the central and northern part of the Red Sea is having northwest winds, At the same time, the southern part has a wind from south-southwest direction, which is also part of the northeast monsoon winds. So the central region having a merging of two kinds of wind systems. If you look at more detail about the regional features of the winds, you can see here very strong winds of the order of 10 to 15 meters per second. These winds are called shamal winds, which is in northwesterly directions. These winds are very strong and quite frequent in the Arabian Gulf, especially during winter. And in summer also, during June, we can experience strong shamal winds. And these winds have an extension, spatial extension, even up to the Arabian Sea. It was not known before about the shamal wind extension in the Arabian Sea, but a study which was carried out in 2011 that identified the wind systems and the associated waves in the Arabian Sea. If you look at in these wind patterns, you can see that there are another wind systems, with northerly wind systems you can see here. We particularly analyzed these wind systems and we found that there are very strong winds which is independent of shamal winds, although it was occurred here, co-occurred with shamal winds, but it's an independent wind system which is a low-level jet originating from Turkmenistan, Afghanistan region, and which is passing through the Makran mountain ranges of Balochistan and entering the Arabian Sea. So these wind systems are called Makran winds. And some of the features during which is that you can see that another wind system was developed here. If you look at very locally to the southern Arabian Gulf, you can see that there is another wind system which is generated from the Iranian coast, entering the Arabian Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz and intensifying it in the southern Gulf. These winds are called Nashi winds, which is of the order of 10 to 15 meters per second, almost similar magnitudes as shamal winds. But the frequency of occurrence of Nashi winds are not that great. When we talk about its impact, the frequency also matters. But whenever it prevails, there is strong impact. As we see recently in our study, that there are strong impact of Nashi winds in the east coast of Qatar. Another feature which we can see from here is that during shamal winds as well as during the Makran winds events, you can see an anti-U-turn of the wind in the southern peninsula, which is going further up and entering the central or the northern Red Sea as easterly winds. This feature is visible during both the associated both the events. So there are some localized, or we can say it's a kind of jets from the land to the sea, as far as the northern and central Red Seas are concerned. The seasonal feature of the winds in the Red Sea, as I mentioned you earlier, during summer, this is the typical feature where the northwesterly winds are dominant. But during July and August, there are some wind events which are called Tokar Gap winds, which are entering the central Red Sea through this region, which are very strong, and it is crossing the Red Sea basin across the Red Sea, and these winds are very strong because of these two mountains here, and this is the Tokar Gap, and the winds are originating from the central Sudan, which is converging to this region and moving as a tunneling effect. So the wind during this period is very strong, and it occurs during July and August. During winter, the wind pattern, as I informed earlier, there is a convergence between two wind systems, the southeasterly wind and northwesterly winds are converging near the Takhar Gap area, where the wind becomes almost negligible magnitudes. So this zone is called convergent zone. So this is the feature during winter. When we talk about these variabilities, spatial and regional and interannual variabilities, all these variabilities are taken into account when we make the wind energy assessments. So I will show some examples of the wind resource assessed in the Arabian Gulf and Red Sea. Here you can see the wind data has been analyzed for a period of 1979 to 2015 for the Arabian Gulf. Here, the wind speed is higher. The average annual wind speed is higher in the central Arabian Gulf, which is of the order of 6 to 8 meters per second. In the northern Arabian Gulf, it's of the order of 5 to 6 meters per second, but in the southern Gulf has relatively low mean wind speeds. If you look at the wind power density calculated for this region, the wind power has an order of up to 300 watts per meter square in the central Arabian Gulf. Especially you can see the northern part of Qatar and Bahrain. From this we can understand that yes, there are sufficient wind energy in this region, especially in the central and northern regions, but relatively low in the southern Gulf. This is a particular study we carried out for the exclusive economic zone of Qatar by analyzing a 40-year data. We find that there are sufficient wind energy resources in the offshore regions of Qatar, especially in the northern and northeastern part, of the order of 200 to 250 watts per meter square. You can also see there is sufficient wind energy around Bahrain. When we talk about the interannual variabilities associated with wind power, you can see the wind power is keep on fluctuating between the years. This is the common nature of the atmospheric processes. So, but at times we can see a sharp decrease and sharp increase in wind power, which are associated with global climatic indices such as the ENSO. For example, during El Nino, strongest El Nino years, the wind is decreasing. So these are the fluctuations which we see. But if you take a 40-year period and analyze the trend, we can see that the trend is relatively low, not that great. So we can say that the wind resources assessed here is more or less stable in this region. This is the monthly feature of the wind resources. You can see higher wind power of the order of up to 400 watts per meter square. You can see during the winter season, January, February, and March, as well as in December. You can see very strong wind power densities. In June, also we get almost similar wind power densities because of the summer shamal winds. Other months, the wind power are relatively low. So the most of the wind power contributing to this annual average are coming from winter season as well as during May, June, and November. November is also considered as winter season. When we look at the Red Sea wind resources, a study by Langorden et al. Shows that the annual mean wind power in the Red Sea is of the order of like 200 to 400 watts per meter square. And the higher energy is somewhere here near the Qatar Gap regions. Otherwise, it's low in the southern coast of Saudi Arabia, but in the northern and central part, there is sufficient wind energy as per this assessment. The monthly variabilities, the anomalies, when we analyze, we can see that there are positive and negative anomalies compared to the annual mean power. And interestingly, you can see during July and August, as I informed you earlier about the Qatar Gap winds. So this higher positive anomaly is because of the Qatar Gap winds during these 2 months. During winter season, say October, November, and December, there is a very strong negative anomaly, which is because of the convergence. During the convergence periods, the winds are almost close to zero in this region. So these are the variabilities exist. But apart from the variabilities, when we look at the occurrence of exploitable wind speed, we can say that yes, there is 70 to 80 or 90% winds are exploitable. Normally, the wind speed, the exploitable wind speeds are considered like 3 meter per second, above 3 meter per second. So there are sufficient wind energy resources in the central and northern Red Sea, but the southern Red Sea has an order of 40 to 50%, which is not that great according to this assessment. This paper indicates that, of course, this is done for the onshore wind farm analysis, but near the coast, there is sufficient wind speeds of the order of 5 to 6 meter per second in the onshore regions. Definitely in the offshore regions, the wind speeds will be slightly higher than that. Once we make the wind energy resource assessments, then the next step is to identify the suitable locations, then the suitable wind turbines. According to the International Electrotechnical Commission, the wind turbines are classified into 3: class 1 for high wind, class 2 medium wind, and class 3 for low wind. So considering the wind resources in the Arabian Gulf and the Red Sea, we can say that we can only go for class 3 turbines, because the average wind speed, annual average wind speed, there is an upper cap of around 7.5 meter per second or around that. So in the Red Sea and Arabian Gulf, the potential wind speeds, average wind speeds is like 6 to 7 meter per second. So we have to go for the class 3 turbines. This is already implemented in Saudi Arabia. Recently, the electricity generation started a couple of months ago in Damat Al Jandal. A 400 megawatt utility scale wind power project were established in Al Jauf province. So where the wind turbine they used, which is around 4.2 megawatt for each wind turbine capacity. So that is like class 3 wind turbine. And study about the Neom city indicates that they are also suggested class 3 wind turbines for this region with a 3.2 megawatt capacity according to this particular study. Another important study which carried out by the Energy and Climate Change Institute of University of Southampton, they made an assessment based on representative cost ratio that includes various payers, linking with various payers, the criteria, alternatives. Even they are taking account of the availability of the existing power grids of the region for the transmission of the electricity in their study. So what they found that according to their analysis or the representative cost ratio which they introduced, which is slightly different from the previous hierarchy, analytic hierarchy processes. So in this, they classified based on a score. The score is ranging from 0 to 1. The score close to 1 indicates that there is very good potential of wind resources, and the score close to 0 is that there is no potentiality of wind resources in that region. So according to their study, what we can see is that the regions such as the offshore regions of Kuwait, Saudi Arabia here, and around Bahrain and northern and western part of Qatar has some good potential of wind energy resources which can be exploited. Similarly, the southern coast of Oman, the southwest coast of Yemen, central and northern Red Sea. This we already identified in our other analysis also. The central and the Red Sea, central and the northern Red Sea offshore regions have high wind energy potential. Okay, so these are the preliminary information about the wind resources available in this region. So let me summarize. Yeah, we can say that the wind power resources were broadly investigated in the Arabian Gulf and the Red Sea, which are quite sufficient to make some initial assessments of identifying the possible locations. Once we identify possible locations, we need to do a more detailed analysis, site-specific wind power extraction assessment that includes the turbine, the nature of turbines, and different economic evaluations. So all of this to be considered before the implementation of wind farms in these regions. And of course, Class 3 turbines are suitable according to the available assessment of this region, as also established at wind turbines at Dumat Al Jandal wind farm. Okay, finally, I would like to invite your attention that the Environmental Science Center, Qatar University, holds the UNESCO Chair in Marine Sciences, which is the first of its type in this region. So the major topic of this, oceanography of the Arabian Gulf with particular reference to exclusive economic zone of Qatar, and it is led by Professor Vedamani. Here his email address is given here. So we are aiming under this chair, providing a clean, healthy, resilient, predicted, safe, sustainably harvested, protective, transparent, and accessible Arabian Gulf. Almost all the aspects are covered. So we are very keen to collaborate with the institutes in this region. We already have some collaborations, and we would like to extend it further. And we together can make a healthy, resilient, and protective Arabian Gulf. That's all for today's talk, and thank you so much for listening me. You can ask me any questions, or you can provide me any suggestions, and also you can reach me my email as shown here.
Thank you, Dr. Aboobacker. It was a nice presentation, very well. And you provided the resources available in this area. I agree with you that in order to utilize the wind energy, we need to do a lot of studies, because most of these areas are a part of migratory birds route also, which is going to be impacted also. Now we'll go to the question and answer session. Please use the raise hand option. There is one question from Mohammed Ashraf. Ashraf?
Thank you, Mr. Dr. V. Aboobacker, for this very nice presentation. It was really informative. The resources, wind resources of Arabian Gulf and Red Sea. By the way, Dr. Aboobacker, he was my junior in Qatar University of Science and Technology. Dr. Aboobacker, I have a couple of questions today. You are mentioning that from your last 15 years of data, the relative high wind energy in the Central Arabian Gulf. But at the same time, as we all know that you said there are Makra Nashi winds in the Southern Arabian Gulf. Then still, with all these winds in the Southern Arabian Gulf, why the relative wind energy is more in the Central Arabian Gulf? Is it because of the fetch? That is my first question. Then the second question, you mentioned that the average wind speed from the Central Arabian Sea is around 4 to 6 meters per second. And we also mentioned that for a class 3 turbine, it needs minimum 7.5 meters per second in order to get economically feasible wind energy. So thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the wind, yes, of course, there is Nashi winds, but I already mentioned that its frequency of occurrence is relatively low. That may be the one of the concern. It is not reflecting in the average wind speed in the Southern Arabian Gulf. As far as the Shamal winds are concerned, which are very strong in the northern and central Arabian Gulf. When it moves away from the Central Arabian Gulf, its intensity is reducing. So that's why the average wind speed is relatively low in the Southern Gulf. And talking about the wind turbine, I don't think it's a minimum, but there are turbines which can be exploited below this 7.5. So whatever the turbines designed below 7.5 meters per second also classified in class 3 according to the whatever the literature available.
Thank you, it is clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aboobacker. There is a question from Dr. Morris.
Thank you, Dr. Aboobacker, for this interesting presentation. So I was wondering here in the Arabic region, dust and sandstorms are playing a big role here in the environment. So I was wondering how does that affect the wind turbines? Can they cope with the dust and the sandstorms that are occurring here in the Arabic region, or might there be problems?
Yeah, I'm not that much expert about the turbine and its maintenance features. Yeah, but certainly there will be impacts of the dust in the wind turbines, and maintenance might be required, but I'm not the right person to answer about the wind turbine maintenance.
Thank you. There is a question from Dr. Lin.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Aboobacker. I have a question about, can you give us the prediction or estimation that how wind farm can make contribution to the total electronic need in, say, in Arabian Gulf or even in Qatar, for example, 10% or 50%, like this?
Yeah, it depends on the energy resource is plenty, but it depends on how we are going to utilize. I will give one example. The Mat Al Jandal wind farm, they are producing electricity which can consume by around 70,000 houses. So that's a rough estimate. But if you make more wind farms, you can obviously you can meet the demands, but not entirely. There are other sources like solar radiations and other sources also to be considered along with this.
Okay, so then I have a second question. That we know that the energy use in every country, we have a seasonality. And for example, in the Gulf, maybe there's a lot of need in summer. Does this time is also the peak time for the wind farm, or we need to do something like energy store to mitigate this difference in the energy need?
You're talking about the seasonal extraction alone?
Yeah, no, I'm saying that the seasonality between the needs and supply. For example, in the Gulf, we maybe have a lot of electronic need in summer because we need a lot of AC. But it is also the time where the wind farm will produce a lot of wind, or the wind farm will generate a lot of energy in winter, and then we have a gap.
Yeah, but the wind turbines are designed in such a way to extract energy for low winds also, like 3 meters per second, above 3 meters per second wind speed. So yeah, we cannot say there are no potential electricity generation during summer. Yes, there are. It's obviously it is low, but as you said, winter we have high wind energy resources. But another aspect is that during summer we have alternative source like solar radiation that can be utilized.
Okay, thank you.
Interesting, interesting. Thank you so much. Any more questions from participants or panelists? If you don't have, I think we will wind up the first session. But before closing, if Dr. Aboobacker and Dr. Rusty Brainard also, if you have a few words to say, yes, we have time. Dr. Aboobacker, you can say a few words before closing the session, if you have.
I already explained almost.
Okay, very good, very good.
No questions I can address. Yeah.
Dr. Rusty Brainard, because he didn't get time to say afterwards, quickly I switched over to next presentation.
I would just like to again to thank you and the Emirates and the entire host team from KFUPM for organizing and hosting this very important workshop. I think we're all learning as we go, and I look forward to the continued discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we will have a break.
Thank you so much for inviting for me this wonderful workshop. For the very good thank you to the organizers.
Thank you, Dr. Rusty Brainard, Dr. Aboobacker, and all. We will have a short break for 15 minutes, and now the time is 9:37. So exactly after 15 minutes, we will resume and we'll go to the next session, which will be moderated by Dr. Shivashankar. And the session name is Fishery and Aquaculture.